What's up, guys? In this video, I've put together some of the most mind-blowing psychological facts that'll seriously mess with your head. Trust me, you'll want to stick around till the end because this stuff is wild. Oh, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell if you haven't already. You won't want to miss any of my new content. All right, let's dive in. The first crazy thing about our psychology is that we tend to massively overestimate how we'll react to future events. Studies have shown that when we imagine positive things happening, like winning the lottery, getting married, or taking that dream vacation, we think we'll be way happier than we actually end up being when it really happens. And it's the same deal with negative events, too. If we picture something really awful happening, like a death or serious illness in the family, knock on wood, we imagine it'll be absolutely devastating and that we'll barely be able to cope. But in reality, when that stuff does go down, it's not nearly as bad as we thought it would be. So basically, every time we try to peek into the future, we think our emotions will be off the charts, but they're actually way more muted than that. Here's another psychological quirk that pretty much everyone experiences, including yours truly. When something bad happens to you, you blame the situation rather than yourself. But when that same thing happens to someone else, you blame the person, not the situation. Like, say, someone is late for a meeting with you. You've been waiting half an hour, wasting your time, and they're like, sorry, the bus broke down and there was crazy traffic. You're probably going to be pissed at them specifically, like it's their fault, and direct all your anger and focus towards them. But if the roles were reversed, and you were the one who was late for the meeting, you'd blame the situation instead of yourself. It'd be like, it's not my fault, the bus sucked and there was awful traffic, it was out of my control. We all do this. It's just human nature. Psychologists even have a name for it: the fundamental attribution error. Depending on whether it's us or someone else who messed up, we blame either the person or the circumstances. The next wild psychological phenomenon is demonstrated really well by this slide. Take a look at this text and read what it says. It doesn't matter what order the letters are in for each word, as long as the first and last letters are in the right place. You can scramble up the insides of words however you want. Just keep the first and last letters where they belong, and your brain will still be able to read the whole thing, no problem. Next up is the paradox of choice phenomenon. We all think having a ton of options is better. The more stuff on the shelf, the more likely we'll find something we really vibe with, right? Wrong. Turns out we actually hate having too many choices. Sounds crazy, but it's true. They did this study in a grocery store jam section. First, they set up a display with 24 different jam flavors, a massive selection. They watched how many people came over to check it out and how many actually bought something. Then they downsized to just 6 jam varieties and repeated the experiment. And you know what happened? Way more people were drawn to the 24 jam display, but hardly any of them bought anything. But with the 6 jam setup, fewer window shoppers, but way more people actually made a purchase. So having a buttload of options attracts us. But we end up being paralyzed. A limited choice is less appealing at first, but we're way more likely to commit when there aren't a million things to decide between. Weird, right? Oh, and get this. Scientists calculated that on average, people can only pay attention for about 10 minutes at a time. That means if someone's droning on for longer than that in a meeting, you can bet hardly anyone's listening after the 10-minute mark. People will start zoning out, playing with their hair, picking their noses, you know how it is. Another crazy finding is that loneliness is legitimately terrible for you. Like, researchers estimate it's about as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. No joke, being alone too much can actually shorten your lifespan. Lots of people love to daydream, but did you know the average person spends 30% of their waking life doing it? That's a huge chunk of time with your head in the clouds. The upside is that frequent daydreamers tend to be more creative. So hit me up in the comments. Are you a hopeless daydreamer, or do you prefer to keep it real with both feet on the ground? Here's a freaky one for you. You can actually do things you've never learned and know stuff you were never taught, thanks to genetic memories passed down from your ancestors. It's like your brain has different layers. There's your conscious mind on top, then your subconscious, but even deeper than that is this supraconscious realm of primal knowledge and skills that got baked into your DNA over generations. I mean, think about babies with iPads. They just instinctively know to use their fingers to swipe and scroll without anyone showing them how. That's the supraconscious at work, installing all those built-in instincts and talents. Crazy to think about, right? Another wild psychological fact. If you're bilingual, speaking different languages actually allows you to shift into different personalities and mindsets. Like, if you're a native Russian speaker, when you start jabbering in English, you might find yourself reacting, thinking, and behaving in totally new ways compared to your native tongue. That's why they say, as many languages you know, as many times you're a human being. All right, get ready for this one. Your most vivid memories are completely unreliable. Intense emotions majorly distort how we recall events. Psychologists did this study after 9/11, interviewing Americans right after the terror attacks that shook the nation. A few days later, they asked people, "What were you doing and how did you feel in that moment?" and recorded all the responses. Then, 3 years down the line, they asked those same people the exact same question. What were you doing and feeling when 9/11 happened? And you know what? The answers were totally different. When people look back on highly emotional events years later, their memories get massively distorted. It's a well-known phenomenon, which is why eyewitness testimony in court is so unreliable. People can vividly remember things that never actually happened just because of how radically our brains can reshape memories over time. Here's one that separates the winners from the losers, and addicts from non-addicts. The ability to delay gratification and get enjoyment from anticipating things rather than instant payoffs. Recent studies have linked anticipatory pleasure to dopamine production, that feel-good neurotransmitter that gives you a hit of satisfaction. You've probably noticed how the build-up and fantasy beforehand is way more exciting than the actual event itself. Like, the anticipation of a hot date or scoring those concert tickets is way more thrilling than the date or show itself. If you can tap into that delicious feeling of anticipation, it's a good sign. People who get more pleasure from looking forward to stuff tend to have healthier dopamine levels and are less prone to things like addiction and impulsive behavior. On the flip side, folks who struggle with that delayed gratification are more likely to make impulsive, self-destructive choices because they just can't appreciate the anticipation. They need that instant gratification hit, even if it's fleeting or harmful. They're born with a deficit when it comes to their dopamine feedback loops. All right, one more for today's mind melters. Despite having way more pain receptors than men, like twice as many, women have significantly higher pain tolerances. Sounds counterintuitive, but it actually makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. That higher pain threshold is likely tied to women being the ones to go through the excruciating process of childbirth. Nature kind of had to boost the pain tolerance for females so they wouldn't, die from agony during labor. Can you imagine a dude trying to push out a baby? He'd straight up pass out from pain shock. But women's bodies are built to withstand that savage pain blast. Phew, that's probably enough brain twisters for today. Let me know in the comments which of these psychology facts blew your mind the most. And remember, if this video hits 20K likes, I'll put together a part 2 dose of these reality-bending facts to scramble your noggin even more. Share this around with your friends, fam. That way more minds can be blown. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay looped in. Until next time, laters.